the water came up a foot higher than where the rocks ended, because I never expected the water to be this high.
We're in really one of the most heavily affected areas, so we're seeing some of the most intense flooding right here on Beaumont Farm Road.
It's coming over all the breakwaters right now, all the break walls that have been set up. So a lot of homes and a lot of people are impacted right now.
In 2019, we had some good floods in Muskoka, and there was a lot of damage, and people were aware that there are problems when the water flows. And that was a flood that was big, but we'd had floods like it before. They come every few years. There are other years when we don't have any floods. We haven't had anything significant since 2019, but who knows what will happen this year. And the fact is, we don't control the water, and the flooding depends on whether there's a lot of snowpack, whether there's a lot of rain at the time the snow is melting. There's a whole bunch of factors that determine whether it's going to flood, and we have to be prepared for it.
I think one of the big lessons I've learned is that, unlike many other parts of Ontario, Muskoka doesn't have a conservation authority. And so the way that we deal with flood situations here is quite different.
Mother Nature is very difficult to tame, and if we have 100-year floods regularly, there's not much that can be done about it. And perhaps this is a sign that global warming is a real threat. It's not so much global warming, it's climate change.
Climate is having a big impact on the weather. It is changing the way in which water arrives. We're getting more intense storms. We're getting longer periods of drought between storms. We're probably getting a slightly wetter climate overall, and a lot of that extra moisture is coming down in the wintertime. So we can have winters where the snowpack could get quite large. And this is something we can't predict in detail. We can predict it with some certainty in generalities, and the message is it's going to get worse. And so one of the things I say to people is 2019, you ain't seen nothing yet.
You know, they were classified as 100-year storms that both happened 6 years apart. So maybe there's bad luck in that, or maybe things are a little bit different. And you know, we are seeing a change in climate. There's no question about that. And as we do, I think we need to make decisions about infrastructure and how we approach that at all levels of government in a way that recognizes that. So you know, you see the government that I'm a part of is making a lot of investments in infrastructure, and some of that is to accommodate for changes that we're seeing in weather patterns and accommodate for the potential for flooding. Also, there's a lot of discussion that's gone on, specifically in Muskoka, with money that was invested by the government around watershed management and the larger watershed that we have here and what we can do within that, whether that's integrated watershed management approaches or other things to talk about mitigating flooding. It's really up to Mother Nature. We don't have dams and control structures that are going to stop flooding. So, how can we best manage it? How can we best prepare for it and be ready if something happens?
So the worst case of flooding that we've had in the District of Muskoka occurred in 2019. From that, we were able to generate funding from provincial and federal sources to acquire the LiDAR and the consulting to generate the flood areas on the map. We never had that before. Or very current. So that was the reason why we've gotten all this floodline mapping, because of the worst event we've ever had. And now we can see where future potential flooding events would occur, and we could plan around that. Maybe we don't build in that area, or maybe we build on stilts, or maybe you talk to the planners and engineers, they have solutions on trying to mitigate those worst case scenarios going forward.
We do need to start to think about how we live with or avoid areas that could be flooded going forward. We need to think about the whole watershed. A really good example is that About half of our annual rainfall in the Muskoka River watershed is sent back to the atmosphere through our forests. And yet, when we're looking at how to forecast and manage floods here, we don't think about the forests, the wetland capabilities we have up in the top part of the watershed when we're thinking about making land use decisions that might affect those. And so there's a lot of things we could be doing more of if we were coordinating at a watershed scale.
We create problems for ourselves by refusing to admit that nature is powerful, and we create problems for ourselves by failing to learn to live with nature instead of controlling nature. We're not big and strong enough to control nature, and we have to learn to live with it. If we learn to live with it, it's wonderful.